Welcome to this week's edition of Rugby Unfiltered. I'm your host, Jan de Koning, and with me, the very knowledgeable Eugene Eloff. Loffie, welcome.
Hi, Jan. Thank you very much. Great to be back and very excited about our new competition, which we're going to discuss. And actually, I thought about it. To me, this has got much more value than the World Cup. And the reason why I'm saying that is because this is really mostly strength versus strength here. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, yes, what is your opinion of this competition, mate?
Yeah, Eugene, the important thing for me is uh, the way the Springboks started, the way New Zealand started. Yeah, I'm looking at the big teams, France, New Zealand, France, Australia, Ireland, Argentina, Scotland. Yes, I know Fiji and Wales beat Fiji. Um, so I think for me, while the baby box are going on, they're playing as we record this, or they will be playing later today. So it's a bit difficult talking about that particular tournament. I think this is the one part of the game that really excites me when we get to this level, and you can see uh, people like Rassie's planning, and even when we've got this enormous injury list. Rassie still comes up with a winning formula. He still comes up with a winning team. Peter Steph the toy at lock and all sorts of things. I don't think people actually realize how much depth the Springboks have at their disposal.
No, that's true, Jan. And coming back to the competition, I think to me, what excited me the most was this weekend that just passed, I think something like 64 tries. I'm not sure exactly the number. Tries were scored. I think you'll have the statistics. And that says a lot. And starting Saturday morning, it was actually just a fantastic rugby day. And I think New Zealand and French set the tone for this competition by playing expansive running rugby. Tries scored. It's gone to the end of the game. It could have gone anyway. A lot of people felt that France was unlucky not to win. But that set the tone, and then Ireland playing Australia. I actually had Australia to win that game because of the progress they had under Schmidt, and Ireland came and played a clinical game, and two major breaks in the game turned it around, and they won it. Um, and I think our big discussion point, to me, the biggest surprise of the weekend was Japan beating Italy because because of the Six Nations and how Italy has improved. I thought that would be a certain winner, and Japan actually beat them well. So yeah, um, the Springboks, you said it all, and I guess it'll be our main topic today. Just shown that at number 99, getting injuries and having curveballs did not take us off our rail and our goal that we set for ourselves.
Yeah, to get back to your point earlier, there were 54 tries scored across the 6 matches. There's an average of 9 tries per match, which was, we had the 2 outlier matches, or one outlier, that's Japan 27, Italy 10. That's the only game where that's the lowest scoring game. So 37 points in that match is the lowest scoring game. South Africa 45-21, New Zealand 34-32, France, Ireland 33-31, Australia, Wales 39-24 against Fiji, and Scotland 47-38 against Argentina. Now that is really impressive stats if you just look at the numbers. But I think I do want to get back to your point that you said about the value of this tournament in terms of the World Cup. Given the World Cup next year in Australia has been increased to 24 teams and 6 pools, suddenly you've got so many extra teams which has got no chance. I can count on my one hand, personally, I can count on my one hand the number of teams I believe can win the World Cup. So this is much more exciting. You got jeopardy from every weekend. You got every match. You got jeopardy. You were right. The New Zealand France game went down to the wire. Australia Ireland went down to the wire, and I watched those games, and it is really really exciting to watch those teams the way they play, and then to cap the day off with the Springboks racing into an early lead, sitting back on their heels, allowing England back into the game, and then in the second half, after Russia had a few choice words with the team, off they go. And even though it's not our full strength team, they were just simply too good for an England team, which is clearly on the decline.
Yes, Jan, before we talk about the box, I would like to go back to what we discussed about the cloud, about all the teams going to the World Cup. And I'm not criticizing World Cup or the IRB or whatever. I just think it's too big. It's too lumpy, if that's the right word. Again, and we discussed it in our previous podcast about teams like Zimbabwe, Portugal, Romania, and those going to the World Cup. Who's going to watch those matches? And that's what makes. And I'm not taking it away from them. I also think they need to go really look at a pre World Cup or a B World Cup where teams can be relegated to the World Cup itself, so that we don't lose that traction. But that's what makes this competition so exciting, north-south. There's not a lot of difference between the teams, although there was one pretty much big margin. But don't be surprised if this does not get more viewers than the World Cup. And that's just my opinion, Jan. And then coming back to the box, about the match itself, to me that was significant. We waited for that physical tussle that we were going to break him in the scrums. And I think the first scrum, and again with good statistics, I think it was in the 30th minute or late in the game, in the first half, when the first scrum came. And we did not demolish them. And the second scrum, I actually think they got a penalty. But as you say, that to me, it was like we were managing the game. We had control, and we can talk about individuals later. We had control the whole time. And England played. Don't take it away. They tried. You can not take the effort away. But once we were oiled and we got rhythm and momentum, we were going to be very difficult to stop, Jan.
Yeah. I do want to get back to another point that you also touched on, the value of the Nations Championship to the World Cup. So, I mean, that obviously it's a subjective view, but the World Cup remains, in a certain sense, the pinnacle of the sport. But I agree with you that world rugby is, and yeah, I mean, it sounds like criticism, but it's a proper uplifting critique. The fact is, there's too many teams which are also Rands, and you've mentioned them. And that means only after the round of 16 do you start having real jeopardy, because you know that the top 8 or 10 teams will go through to the quarterfinals. Well, at least to the quarterfinals, or to the round of 16, and then most of them will advance to the quarterfinals. And that's when the real rugby starts. It was like that in 2023. We had some really good games. So the opening game was France-New Zealand. And then the South Africa-Ireland game. Those were the big pool games with, we had a Portugal win, and we had other exciting stuff. But you're right about the traction that these tournaments get. They don't get proper traction in terms of how many spectators and how many viewers you get, because people will use those games, as they've done in the past, to go make tea, go mow the lawn, or whatever they want to do. The really intriguing games is going to be the big game. So in the next World Cup, next year's World Cup, you have New Zealand, Australia in one pool. So that'll be exciting. But if you look at South Africa's pool in the World Cup, I mean, there's nobody that, unless we do a Japan like we did in 2015, there's nobody that threatens us, which means we're basically cruising into the playoffs. And we've seen what happens with teams that cruise into the playoffs. They come in cold, and they're not, underdone a bit in the playoffs. And that's the biggest risk. That's why this tournament is so important, to the teams that are playing, because they get week after week, they get quality. I mean, next up is the Springboks play Scotland, and then we've got Wales, and Wales, while they're not the best team around at the moment, and they're also struggling a bit, they'll be like England, they'll give us a run in the first half, and then maybe in the last quarter, the second half, we'll just destroy them but it's still good value. It's better than playing a Georgia or a Romania or a Zimbabwe. You don't get. I mean, we can send our third team in there, our C team in there, and we will still beat Zimbabwe. I mean, the baby box, the under 20 team uh, that played as SAA put 40 points past Zimbabwe. So that tells you all you need to know about where Zimbabwe rugby is. And as much as we'd like them to be a force, they're currently not in the force, and I don't think they've got the resources to become a force.
Yeah, and I think we should move on to the box game, but I have to bring a bit of humor, and my mate is going to crucify me about this. My mate Dave Waterston was coaching Namibia 1 year to the World Cup, and I asked him, so what's his planning? Are they aiming to win a match? And he said, no, mate, we're just going to have a good time. So yeah, a bit of humor with that, and he had a good time. They got big hidings and so on, but as you said, I think our criticism is positive. It's not breaking down anything. I also know that World Rugby wants to take rugby to the whole world to now make it all inclusive, but maybe we need to be a little bit smarter about it.
Yeah, we can. Just before we move on to this week's coming games, I think the answer is not so much adding more teams to this World Cup. Maybe create a tier 1 and a tier 2 system, where tier 1 is the teams that you think has got. If that's just 10 or 12 teams, they play, and then you have a tier 2 where there's a promotion relegation. You qualify for tier 2, and if you top 10, let's say we got 12 teams. I'm using hypothetical. If you've got 12 teams, 2 fall out. Those 10 teams that are there, that finish in the top 10, stay there. If you reach the quarterfinals, you'll automatically go through to the next World Cup. Then you can start lower down, give these other teams more places to play, more opportunities against like for like, and they won't get overwhelmed when they arrive at a World Cup and you face it. I mean, if Zimbabwe play France or Ireland or New Zealand or South Africa, you just know it's going to be a massacre, and it's no good for those players. I mean, the fact that Zimbabwe are using club players from Cape Town, uh, for that player, it's a great achievement. He's going to the World Cup. He's playing for his country, and you don't want to take that away from him. But what is it going to do to his career if he takes a 100-point hiding? And that happened to Japan in '95. I mean, I think New Zealand put 144 past Japan. I don't know how many of those players ever played rugby after that. It's so demoralizing to sit and watch a team completely outclassed. And yeah, that to me is a sad part. Eugene, if we look at the Springbok game against England, I mean, the Boks back-to-back world champions, number 1 since September last year. Russia is on a 10-match winning streak. Everything is just working out for him at the moment and for the Springboks at the moment. But from the outset, the Springboks controlled the match with their dominant pack. At the high altitude, England just ran out of puff in the latter half, and you could just see, the difference in class in that last 20 minutes, and that was expected. I expected a closer game. I didn't expect the Boks to maybe they scored 2 more tries than I anticipated them to score, but that shows you again how good and well prepared they are. And that also is reflected, Eugene, in the fact that the Springboks have several players in what is listed as the team of the week. I mean, I think for me, and I'll just touch on a few individuals, but I mean, Malcolm Marx, as usual. We all know how good he is. And I know they gave the man of the match to Damien de Allende when it was meant to be Damien Willemse. And that's when the commentator sits in the box and he thinks he knows too much. And he gets the wrong Damien, or somebody doesn't talk properly. To me, one of our best players and the unsung heroes is Malcolm Marx, and then Thomas du Toit. I mean, Thomas destroyed that scrum. He anchored in a good old-fashioned way. He anchored the box scrum. So for me, that was, and then one of the other players that really stood out for me was Cam Roygaard for New Zealand and Matthew Jalibert for France. That's what created, it's players like that that created such great entertainment value in those other games.
Yeah, Sean, I agree with you, Thomas and Malcolm. There's always an unsung hero. I think one of the hard workers there was Ruan Nortje. And how easy did Pieter-Steph adapt to that position? And his leadership showed well. Grant Williams was quick behind the base. It showed again, if he gets half a break, he will snipe, and even wings can't catch him. If you look from a coaching point of view, it was not a clinical performance by the Boks, but I'm sure there was a lot of stuff that Rassie would take forward with going into the next match. And for me, it was so great to see our newbies coming into the team, like Paul de Villiers doing well for a first test. Cameron Hanekom worked hard, just to see them how they performed, and Zachary Porton. So also proud of those guys, and Damian Willems studying at Stadio. They're showing that you can study and you can play rugby at that level. So yeah, I think the miscommunication at the end brought a bit of humor, and how the two Damians managed it is actually such a example of our character in South Africa. To them, it was just a joke. Other guys take it very seriously, but it's one of those things. And very proud of the Boks. And I just looked again at the people there, and we were lucky to have a lot of people at Ellis Park after the tickets were made a little bit cheaper. And there's one thing we cannot talk away: Ellis Park is a great stadium, and rugby does unite our nation.
Eugene, I agree with you. I mean, the tickets is another entirely different discussion. Slashing the prices and then giving tickets away, that's a fact. I have a lot of family members that had received free tickets late in the week that went to the stadium. So imagine going into the stadium, paying 3,000 Rand for a ticket, and next to you sits a guy who got his ticket for free on the Friday because he didn't plan to go, and somebody said, listen, there's some free tickets, you want some tickets? I mean, that tells you a lot. And Saru is trying to cover this, and it's smoke and mirrors, and I'm going to do an article about it. But as much as Saru try and cover it up, they dropped the ball with the Ellis Park's tickets, and they're also dropping the ball with the Loftus tickets and the way they're treating the suite holders. So that's a discussion for another time. But I think let's look at Rassie's team that he selected for this coming week against Scotland, to face Scotland. So 10 changes to the starting 15. So a lot of people say, oh, it's our B team or whatever. To me, our first team and second choices are so close to each other. And that's why we can field a bomb squad, because the players that come off the bench are just as good as the players that start. And sometimes and Rassie has had this habit, is putting his best players on the bench. And that's where the bomb squad was started, is the best players is on the bench. And when the opposition think the best players are tiring, even better players come on. So, I mean, I'm just quickly going to run through the team so that we know. It's Aphelele Fassi, Edwil van der Merwe, Jesse Kriel, Damian Willems at center, inside center, Kainan Moody, Andre Pollard, Ambrose Papier, Evan Roos, Pieter-Steph back at flank captaining the team, Paul de Villiers, Ruan Nortje, your favorite, Kobus Wiese, Wilco Louw, Johan Grobler, and Bone Venter. Now, the thing that you should see here is the Bulls, and we know that we're playing Scotland, and the Scotland team consists of just two teams, Glasgow and Edinburgh, and the bulk of the Scotland team comes from Glasgow, and the Bulls beat Glasgow in Edinburgh in the semi-final of the URC. And here's the bulk of the Bulls team. There's 9 Bulls players, although some of them are leaving, but apparently they're still on the Bulls books. So there's 9 Bulls players in this starting 15. So clearly that's Rassie is busy with a plan. People will say, oh, why is he doing that? Why so many changes? These players had known before the start of the tournament that they will play this match. A lot of them would have not played last week because Rassie had a plan. He played a certain team against England. He's playing a different team against Scotland, and he's going to play another different team against Wales. So I think the sheer depth that we've got is something that's the envy of the world, and a lot of teams would just love to have a backup team like this.
Yes, Jan, I think the fact that there are so many Bulls players in this game, I think it's just a coincidence. I don't think it was really planned that much that we need to play against URC is gone. It doesn't matter anymore. What I like about this team, I like Damian Willemse closer to the game. And I like him. I've always liked him inside center. And this is a opportunity for our 9 and 10, for Pollard and for Ambrose, who didn't have that top game in their final again in the URC, to maybe just find their rhythm again and get back. So it's a big responsibility on them. And Fassi also, coming back from injury, has not really got his form yet. And I mean, that is a devastating pack. I think you were 100% right to say there's such a small margin of difference between our top side and our second side. If you now take 35 to 38 players and put them in a pool, they are all good players. And I do believe tactically the team is selected to play maybe a different game plan against Scotland. And we also know Scotland will come. They will bring it. Scotland will have belief that they can beat us. So that's what makes this game so exciting. And I'm happy for Paul de Villiers being there again. I'm for Pieter-Steph going to the side. So I think if we look at the bench, then it's such a powerful squad that's going to be prepared for Scotland. So it's going to be tough for them. And also coming back again to last week, what I forgot to say about the England Springbok game, the height above sea level definitely had a big influence on the last 20 minutes in that game. It might be the same year again, playing in the IFL.
Yeah, Eugene, you touched on the bench, and there's something that I would like to raise as well. So in the post-match presser last week after the England game, Rassie mentioned something in passing, which a lot of people missed. Currently, there's 8 of our frontline locks injured. And people say that's impossible. And then you just look at it. Okay, Eben, Loot, Franco, RG, Jean Klein, Riley Norton, Venter from the Lions, which Rassie wants to groom as a 4-lock that can play flank like a Pieter-Steph type player or a Franco Mostert type player. There's one more that I'm missing now. But I mean, that's 7 already. But Rassie said 8 frontline players. So the reality is that you look at that team and people say, oh, but we don't have specialist lock on the bench. This is the genius of Rassie. So he's got 3 loose forwards on the bench: Ben Jason Dixon, Vincent Tutuka, and Elrich Louw, who all can and have played lock. So people just don't understand. They don't see the big picture when Rassie selects his team. They will look at the team and say, oh, there's too many changes. This is our B team. No, it's not. Rassie's, and that's where you're correct. Rassie's a man with a plan. He's setting us up for success down the line. Whether we like it or not, he's a man with a plan.
Yeah, I think tactically, as I said previously, he's one of the best coaches in the world, and he'll outsmart you. Just when you think you've got the plans he made, you're aware of it, he's already coming with a new angle. And that's what I like about his coaching style and what he's done for Springbok rugby, And yeah, we can be well, there will always be something exciting happening in that game. Whether it's a short line out, a quick scrum, a quick tap, a funny move, but something's going to happen. And that's exciting to wait for.
Yeah, exactly. Luffy, maybe now is a good time to move on to the actual games for Saturday. There's another very exciting. I mean, wall-to-wall rugby on a Saturday. Who would not love that? But we start with New Zealand, and this week they're playing Italy. So an easier game for them. But poor Italy. I don't want to say they're on a hiding next to nothing, but it's really tough for a team to travel south. And a lot of these Northern Hemisphere teams are now finding out what travel really is. I mean, England came here, they're going back to England, and then they're going to Argentina. Italy went to Japan, and then they're into New Zealand, and then they're playing Australia. So yeah, I mean, poor Italy against New Zealand. Australia playing France, that's going to be a massive game. Australia is, as well as they did against Ireland, I think, and the French has got a couple of reinforcements that joined them for the second game of this trip. And yeah, they're going to be very, very tough for Australia to beat this French team. That's followed by Japan, Ireland. Yeah, Japan is going to struggle. I don't think they're going to get right what they did against Italy. Fiji, England, poor Fiji, and the sad part is Fiji play their games in the UK because they don't have a stadium that qualifies for international rugby. So to be in this tournament, they have to play. It's a bit like the Cheetahs playing in a Challenge Cup. Your invite means you go play there because we need a team in that and wherever in Europe. And poor Fiji has got to travel to England and play in the UK, play their match. So that's why England went back there. And then the Springboks against Scotland, the match of the weekend for me, and Argentina against Wales. That's also another interesting one, Argentina against Wales. But my match of the weekend is definitely South Africa, Scotland.
Yeah, Jan, there are two teams that are hurting. The one is Argentina, that is hurting against Scotland. They're going to lift the game. And the other one is Italy, that got hurt against Japan. So we know Italy will be a miracle if they can match up the All Blacks. But I believe they will put up a better performance. But there are two matches I'm looking forward to. And I agree with you regarding the French, France and Australia. It's going to be a great game. See if Australia do something different, because the French pack is difficult to stop. And then, of course, their flair. They're playing with a bit of their flair again, which makes them unpredictable. And our game against Scotland, I think that is the game of the weekend. Never underestimate the Scots, but you never know what's coming from the box. That actually rhymes.
Well done, Lofi. You're a poet and you don't even know it. Yeah, I agree with you. So, Eugene, let me run through the games or my winners, and you can give yours, and then we'll wrap it with that. So, I definitely pick New Zealand to win.
Me too.
I pick France to win against Australia.
I agree.
Definitely Ireland against Japan. England will destroy Fiji. South Africa is going to win Scotland. The margin again, like last week, I thought the margin would be closer and blew out. So I would say a margin somewhere between 10 and 15 points, depending on what happens.
I can go with you.
And then Argentina, Wales, I definitely put my money on Argentina because Wales is going to travel all the way to South America.
No, Jan, I'm with you on all your predictions there. You know your game.
Only sometimes. I learn the most from you and coaches like yourself and sometimes from Rassie.
You're so funny. But Jan, we have to mention that currently with the Junior World Cup going on in Georgia, we're in a very good position. And looking forward to the game against Wales. I think we're going to end top of our log again. And the playoffs start next week, so it's going to be very, very interesting. As we speak, England and Argentina is playing, and it's a close game. So yeah, and we got the Craven Week going on in PE, so a lot of rugby. And again, watching the youth play, USA's week was last. USA's rugby, which is the old university week, was last week, and Saru proudly won all the games and moved up to a higher level. So rugby is blooming in our country, man. And our youth rugby. We watch the Craven Week. I'm trying to watch all the games. We are so good. We got such good players, and I think the days of quota, the world quota, the word quota, we must get rid of, because these players all are there just on merit and damn good.
Well, Eugene, with that, I think that's a good time to say goodbye till next time. From myself, Jan de Koning.
And Lofi Elof.
Till next week. Enjoy the rugby.
Cheers.